Hello everyone, it's Ren here. Welcome to my room, guys. Hope you are well today. Today, we're going to talk about 3 different kinds of INFJ laughter. 3 ways INFJs laugh. Now, this video is going to be slightly different from my videos on INFJ humor, which I've made, over the years. Try to kind of, take an interest in the kind of the humor that INFJs have and what distinguishes it from other types approaches to humor. To some extent, of course, there'll be overlap between those topics and the topic that I'm focusing on today. But for the most part, this video won't be so much interested in looking at what are the 3 kinds of INFJ humor, but rather what are 3 ways that INFJs relate to being humorous. And if you think that this is quite abstract and you don't know what the hell I'm on about, stick around and you might just understand better in a second. Now, just in case you haven't heard of it, there's a book called The Ecstatic Soul, which I've written on the INFJ type. You should get it if you haven't yet. Deepest book and work on the type yet. There will be a sequel this year. Available at the link below. So is The Infinite Castle. Kafka, Dostoevsky, Camus, Existentialism, de Beauvoir. If you like these authors, Murakami as well, if I haven't mentioned him. That's a novel I've written, supports the channel if you get it. It's less than $10 as well, links are below. And you know that the rumor is that the main character is an INFJ, so if you want an exploration of INFJ-ness in fiction, that might just be the book. There's also a link to my Patreon page down there that you can join. You can join my Patreon. Monthly support anywhere from $3 a month helps me massively. Incremental steps, Speaking of Patreon, this little discussion that I'm about to properly start now started on Patreon because, I release, at the moment, more or less every 2 weeks, I release like an episode of what I call the INFJ Diary to my Patreon supporters, as an exclusive for being supporters of my channel. And these days I'm really focusing on the writing process on the new book, sharing ideas and seeing how, what the first reactions might be and stuff. And I shared the fact that there is a chapter in my current manuscript that is actually focused on laughter, and I didn't know how my Patreon supporters would react, and turns out they reacted by being very interested in this stuff, which is great because it suggests that they are, responding to the kind of interest I have in the topic myself. So now, why is laughter so important for INFJs that a chapter title deserves to be dedicated to it, devoted to it, in a book on the INFJ? Because, if you look at books on the INFJ so far, and probably books that will be in the future, you can expect that there'll be chapters on the NI function, maybe on NI-TI looping, on the INFJ's visioning process, and, the struggle to be a whole in the world and stuff like that. But to have a chapter among a limited number of chapters that's focused on the INFJ laughter sounds a little bit unusual, perhaps, but it also speaks to my approach, in this current book I'm working on, but it's probably my overall approach as well, which is to kind of think of the phenomenology of types, which is to say, what does it feel like? What is it like to have a certain kind of type consciousness, insert type, like INFJ consciousness or another consciousness? And I think that one of the, one of the familiar phenomena of life that are very much experienced prior to being thought, in fact, that are rarely thought, are, phenomena of finding something funny, of laughing. Laughing is something that is much better understood by being experienced than by being read about. So it's a great example of what I try to do in my works. Focus on these experiences, what something feels like, rather than an abstract theory of what something is supposed to be according to a definite list of properties. Notice another excellent topic for this is love. Love is much better understood when you experience it than by reading any number of abstract treatises about it. Yeah, so no surprise, love is also a chapter that I have written on in my current manuscript on what it means for an INFJ to be in love and things like that. Now that that's been said, I do think that there are three main modes of relating to laughter for INFJs. Again, as a concrete option for when they are in a social environment. Okay? So again, we're not talking about modes of particular content for their humor. So we're not talking about like an INFJ having the option between nonsensical humor, say slapstick humor, humor by analogy, observational humor, vulgar humor. There's lots of different ways you can manipulate humor by choosing a particular theme and particular content. I'm not talking about that because in a way, I think that depending on the kind of relationship you have to the very phenomenon of laughter and humor in general, you might actually be attracted to just any of these contents if you're an INFJ. Now, this might be surprising, but this is what I've come to believe on the basis of experience. So what are these modes of relating to humor? And in order to understand these three modes, you need to understand that humor, it is certainly a premise of my new book, really gives you a very sharp look at the authenticity of someone's life, how authentic someone is behaving in their life, how they are authentic to themselves, to their possibilities, to their temperaments, to their histories, to their genealogies, and to their futures. Authenticity is a very existentialist concept. You find it very represented in Kierkegaard and Heidegger, and it's very, very heavily implied throughout Nietzsche as well, and a lot of other existential philosophers, Sartre and others. And maybe the most common way that INFJs laugh, and this is not going to be a popular opinion, but I'll share it because this is what I've observed, is actually an inauthentic relationship to laughter. So it's a relationship where an INFJ is so concerned to get along with other people, to be socially accepted, that they're willing to submit to whatever the mode of laughing and humor is in a particular social group. The only sort of assumption we have to make here is that the humor in question is not so offensive to them that they'll just walk away. But you'll be surprised by the amount of flexibility that INFJs have at repressing their own peculiar way of humorously relating to the world and the notion of existence. You could potentially say the absurdity of existence, by embracing whatever is available in terms of the other people in the group, maybe especially the people who are leading the group, to kind of, just laugh along with them according to, on the terms of these people, not on the terms of the INFJ. So this kind of inauthentic humor, this kind of inauthentic laughter, in the book, I call adapted or adapted submissive. To be more precise, I call it reflective of submissive adaptedness to the social environment. That is to say that in today's world, for a bunch of reasons, and I explore that in much more detail in the book, in the manuscript so far anyway, there's a lot of pressure for INFJs to conform, right, so that they can actually cope, with the modern world as it is, particularly in the West. The way they laugh the way they relate to humor is very, very revealing, because laughter is a window into your soul and what you're willing to laugh at, what you're not willing to laugh at, whether you are coming across as if you have your own authentic brand of humor or not, is going to tell people a lot about people who can, observe things, a lot about you. And I think that paradoxically, for INFJs in the modern world, a lot of them, their laughter is kind of bland and kind of, it's kind of, in a way, featureless, because they're not willing to embrace what it really is for themselves. If you get to know them in private, if you're in a hyper secure environment, you might see a lot more of the originality and irreverence and silliness and abstractness of their humor, but that's not what they will display most of the time. So I would call that, like I said, an adapted submissive relationship to laughter. You're adapting to the laughter of others. You're not showing your own. And of course, as a result of that, the INFJ fade that Frank James talked about in a video released many years ago happens. Well, how could you be surprised by that? You're not willing to be authentically yourself. Of course, you're going to fade. The second type of laughter I call solipsistic laughter. And I would say that this represents, it's quite common among INFJs, but it's less common than the adapted laughter. The solipsistic humor it's more authentic in the sense that the INFJ is, if you like, laughing by their own standards. It's solipsistic because it's cryptic, and in the sense, it's a humor that is almost designed to exclude other people, to remain within your own NI world and potentially within a world that is shared by you and another INFJ, another high NI-FE user. In which case, the relationship of laughter is actually less one of engaging with each other, but more of a mirroring each other. This kind of INFJ, existentially speaking, is an INFJ that, if you like, senses the sacrifices that must be made in terms of authenticity for the mere sake of coping socially with others and coping in the professional world and not making all these sacrifices for INFJs to their personality and their authenticity. But they're responding almost by taking an extreme stance of, I'm not going to engage with this. I'm going to remain extremely self-contained. My humor will be practically only understandable by people who are on my wavelength. And so these INFJs are often quite hermetic and like I was saying, like solipsistic in the sense that there's not going to be any attempt to reach out to other people. So whereas in the case of adapted submissive laughter, what you get is like being like a desperation to reach out to others, dissolving your own laughter identity in the process. In the case of the solipsistic humor of this other kind of INFJ, the ill-adapted INFJ, if you like, you get the opposite. Paradoxically, it is more authentic. And if you get to interact with these INFJs, you might learn a lot about the INFJ existence. Not least because these INFJs are often aware of what they're missing to attain to this third stage, which I think is the most authentic in a sense, and their laughter is reflected in that. I don't know if I have a term for it, because so far every single term I've tried to come up with to designate it has sounded a little bit, I don't want to say silly, but just a little bit, I don't know, it's a bit bombastic perhaps, But it has something to do with what I call the spiritualized INFJ, spiritualized in the sense of having recovered a sense of the sacred, not in a particular, not necessarily in a religious context. So I can refer you back to my videos on spirits and spirituality that I've released recently, but there is a subtitle of one of my chapters, or a chapter on laughter, which is called, and I'm quite happy with this subtitle, it's the title of a subsection, it's called The Infinite Laughter of Liberation. It's bombastic, but I think it carries across like what I'm trying to convey, so I'll keep it. I'm still like it. You get this kind of INFJ humor, and this third kind of INFJ humor is like, it's almost like, it looks like the solipsistic humor, but it's actually opened up to the world. It's an INFJ that has a weird humor, that has a strange humor, that has in some senses a self-contained humor. It's often hard to know when they're serious and when they're not. And one hypothesis I kind of put forward in the book is that the reason why it doesn't seem to have a beginning or end is that this INFJ is always in a kind of humorous relationship to existence itself, to its absurdity, to its goods, to its evils, trying to reach beyond good and evil. It's an acceptance of life as it is, but part of the coping with this acceptance is the amusement that is experienced. Another phrase I quite like that I think I use in the book is that I think this INFJ is like the humor, and this INFJ and their humor. It's like a solipsistic INFJ with their arms wide open. A solipsistic INFJ with their arms wide open. So in a sense, they're not sacrificing their authenticity like the first kind of INFJ and their laughter. It's laughing more along the lines of the second, but it's inviting other people to become part of it and experience the joy of making light of things. Because the thing is, making light of things sometimes is too often accused of not being serious enough in the face of the serious ills that societies across the world are facing. But I think for this particular kind of INFJ, laughter is a serious matter, and it would be wrong, and we know that, you know, people who are not INFJ at all know this as well. Like, laughter is a way of coping with the human condition. It doesn't have to be superficial. You can be very profound by making light of things, and you can be comparatively very superficial by insisting on being serious and having no sense of humor about things. And this INFJ understands this. I think I could talk a lot more about this third kind of INFJ, partly also because I think it's what we should aspire to. But this video is starting to run for quite some time, so maybe I'll make a video drilling down on more detail on this particular kind of INFJ if there is interest. Otherwise, you'll have to get the book. Okay, well, in the meantime, guys, let me know what you thought of this video. More speculative, perhaps, hopefully thought-provoking, and I will see you next Wednesday. Take care. Bye-bye.